Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Basra Daf Kuf Mem Aleph. Should be a quick moving blot, and the Mir Tashem will stop at the top of Kuf Mem Beis Mid Aleph. Fascinating sugya. Who's better, boys or girls? We saw in our Mishnah yesterday that if a father says out loud, if I have a boy, I'm going to give him 100. If I have a girl, I'm going to give 200. So the Gemara says, wait 1 second. Omer im Yalda Ishti Zachar, I'll give 100, but a girl's going to be 200. Lememra, the Bas Adifa Lemi Ben. Are you trying to say that that girls are better than boys? But Amar of Yochanan, we've already what?
Talk about a deer.
It's a lamda shadiyuk that girls are better than boys. But this doesn't fit with the previous Gemara that we've seen just a little bit ago. Amar of Yochanan Mishram Yishon Bar Yochai Kol she'en menech ben liyarsha Kadosh Baruch Hu malei alav evra. That if there isn't a boy, so then Kadosh Baruch Hu is malei evra. He's going to be filled with anger, which implies that it's okay if you don't have a girl. It's not okay if you don't have a boy, which implies the boys are better. So how do we figure this out? And what does word evra mean? We know that word of ha'avartem is anger. Shneimar yom evra hayom hayom. That's what the pasuk says. So how do we make these two sources fit? We have the dik from our Mishnah that says that girls are better than boys. We have the pasuk be'ha'avartem nachalasa, which implies that boys are better than girls. So says the Gemara, 8-9 lines down, kuf mem aleph amud aleph. Hahu, when do we say that boys are better than girls? So there, le'inyan Yerusha ben adifle. When it comes to a Yerusha, so it's true, that's a pasuk in Chumash, and we know that our pecking order, the next of kin pecking order of Yerusha, boys definitely come before girls. But le'inyan harvacha, when it comes to, and this is a discussion what this word means, but le'inyan harvacha, in regards to supporting girls, bito adifale, possibly because of tznius factors, we don't want her to have to go out and make money. Some rishonim, right? It's now we're so used to seeing women in the workplace. It's like it was not standard then. It really just wasn't standard. It was breadwinners and women, male female divide, pretty natural. So that's answer number one, is that when we see that there's a conflict between the inference of our Mishnah that girls are better than boys and the pasuk of Havartam that implies that boys are better than girls, the answers are talking about different things. By Yerusha, you're right. Havartam es nachalasa levito. That's not good. But when it comes to mazon and feeding, it's much better that the girls should be fed first, and that's why we have them as an inference. That's why we have them being bas adifa lemi ben in our Mishnah. Shmuel says things are a little bit different. Shmuel Amar, wait 1 second. Hacha b'mav keres askina. We're talking about the oldest child. What does this mean? Listen to this. If you have a daughter first, that is a very good sign for boys. What does that mean? It's a good sign for boys. What does that mean? So because she'll be able to take in and take care of her younger brothers, because I can speak as someone who has 3 boys first. No, nothing. Flat line. I mean, they sometimes listen when I talk, but they don't have that maternal instinct to be doting and to take care of young children. They'll do it if I ask. Whatever. They'll mimic my behaviors at most. So some say that that's what Rav Chizda meant when he said, Bas tchila simin yafa leban v'ikad amrei dulo shalta be'ein abisha. This is amazing. If girls are born first, then there is no ayin hara. I would love to translate that for you, but I don't know what it means, so we're just going to move on. But that's what the Gemara says. And Amar of Chizda uladidi b'nasan adifan li mibanai. My daughters are better than my sons. So here the Rishonim are also trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And Rashbam, about 12 lines down, says, Ista mefarshi de Rav Chizda b'mav keres. We're talking about the firstborn girl, Kishmaitin. I'm not even going to read all this. But basically, his sons-in-law were bigger Talmidei Chachamim than his sons. So that's why he said his daughters were better than his sons, because his daughters married the sons-in-law who were better Talmidei Chachamim. Some say Hamani, who is the author of our Mishnah that seems to imply that girls are better than boys. That was the diuk that we made. Who is this? Rabbi Yehuda. We're halfway down Kuf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, which sheet of Rabbi Yehuda makes you feel that girls are better than boys? Says the Gemara, Hamani Rabbi Yehuda. Ilema Rabbi Huda de Vikol, from the word Bakol, actually the Tanya, Vashem Berachas Avram Bakol. This we saw many moons ago in Gemara and Kedushin. The pasuk says in Chumash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu benched Avram with Bakol. Rabbi Meir Omer Shelo Hayu Lo Bas. The bracha of Bakol was that he didn't have a daughter. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shahai Lo Bas Uvakol Shema. So what do we see from Rabbi Yehuda? The get. Hashem Berachas Avram Bakol. What does it mean that Hashem benched Avram Bakol? He had a daughter whose name was Bakol. That was the bracha. So we see that girls are better than boys. Says the Gemara, not really. You don't actually see from here that girls are better than boys. We just see that girls are good. Amor de Shamas le Rabbi Yehuda, Bratanami, lo chasre rachmana le'Avram. I could understand you saying that Hashem benched Avram Bakol, that he had girls and he wasn't left without girls. But the adifa mi ben mishamasle, how did you get to there? They can't be this Rabbi Huda. Nice try. But if we're trying to find a Rabbi Huda who is the author of our Mishnah, who left over the implication that girls are better than boys, it's not from this Mari Makom, but Hashem berachas Avram Bakol. That's not a good Mari Makom. So says the Gemara, a little bit more than halfway down, 2/3 of the way down. Aloha, Rabbi Huda, a different one. This is a brisa from Ksubis. Says the Gemara Tanya, mitzvah lazuna sabanos. It's a mitzvah to feed the daughters. V'kal v'chomer labanim to aske b'Torah divrei Reb Meir. It's a mitzvah to feed the girls food, but it's a bigger mitzvah to feed the boys because they learn Torah, or they have a chiyuv Torah to learn Torah. However, says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, mitzvah lazuna sabanim is a mitzvah to feed the boys v'kal v'chomer labanos, the low lis zalan, so that they don't become a bizayon. They should not have to go knocking door. It's not appropriate. Again, I don't know what the right word is. Not appropriate. It's not sanua. It's not common. It certainly wasn't. What is harder? The walking, the knocking, or the bizayon? Yeah, that's what the word lissalon over here means, is that a bizayon of some kind. So over here, what do we see? We see that we found our sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda says kal v'chomer labanos, that the girls are even more chashuv when it comes to feeding, and that fits nicely with the language that we saw a little bit earlier in the Gemara. So that's the answer to our question, and we can put a little period here, and then we'll start going back to other parts of our Mishnah. Says the Gemara as follows: Eloha de Tanya, we have a brisa. This brisa is fascinating. It's found in our Tosefta, but the way it's quoted here is quoted differently than in the Tosefta in the back of the Gemara. Take a look at the Maseches Shas here on the side in Os Katan Daled. Tosefta Paraktes, B'shinui K'tzas, which means that the copy of the Tosefta, and when it was put in our Gemara, was messed up a little bit. The Tanya, Yolda Zachar v'Nekeva, if a man has both a boy and a girl, Hazachar notel shisha dinar v'Nekeva noteles shnei dinar. The boy gets 6 dinar, and the girl gets 2 dinar. So if you do the math, this is 6 dinar is 150 zuz. There's 25 dinar in a 25 zuz in a dinar, so it's 150 dinar versus 50. Now this is very difficult to understand. But how does this math work out? That's not what happened in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah had a 1-to-2 ratio, 100 and 200. Here we see that it's 150 and 50. So how does this work out? B'mai Amar Rav Ashi Amrisa l'shmaisa kamed Rav Kahana, and he says that we're dealing with a case b'mesares where he articulated, where he focused on things. It was very clear about what his conditions were. So that's what the Gemara, the Rashbam says over here, right next to where we are. But Messiah shesires tanaav zelam afreya mizeh shesna leidas to umim im yatsa zachar tchila b'achar kach nekevi. So he was very carefully chiseled out. So let's see what it was. It says the Gemara, it's 6 lines from the bottom. To Amar, he said zachar tchila. If the boy is born first, so then Masayim, he gets 200. Nekeva achara v'lo klum. And if there's a girl afterwards, then nothing. If it was nekeva tchila mana, if the girl of the twins were born first, then there's 100 given over. Zachar achareha mana, he also gets 100. V'yalda zachar nekeva v'lo yadinan haimina unafak beresha. What if the boy and girl were both born, twins were born, but we don't know the order in which they were born? So then zachar shakil mana mimanav shach. At a minimum, he would have gotten 100. And idach. Mana have it would have been a mana, but it's mamana mutal b'safek v'cholkin. So this brisa, which talks about shisha dinarin and shnei dinarin, is basically not our Mishnah. Our Mishnah was talking about where the father articulated the case. This brisa, this Tosefta actually, that we were speaking about with 3 lines, 4 lines from the bottom of Kuf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph. So there, what was that talking about? That was talking about mamana mutal b'safek cholkin. So the numbers look very different. So there is 100, and then the last 100 they split. Half of it was taken away from one and given to the other. Still 200, but it was just given over in a different way. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. In what case could we possibly have a scenario that a boy and girl are born and only a mana, only 100 is given out? If you want to say I didn't know what's going on, it should be like the Tosefta that we saw over here. It should be 6 dinar versus 2 dinar, which is 150 to 50. If you want to say it's like our Mishnah where they did articulate the cases, it should be 100 for the boy, 200 for the girl. But what is this scenario where we see, like the Brisa, that there's a boy and girl born and only 100 is given out? So it says the Gemara, Amar Avina b'mivsirani. We're talking about the person who gave over the news. We're not talking about what we're giving to the children. We're talking about the person who broke the news. Hey, you had a child. Let's turn to the top of Kuf Mem Aleph Amud Beis. The Tanya. Amivsirani, the person who told me this good news. B'man niftar rachma shel ishti. What was the peta rechem? What was the gender of the first child that I had? So im zachar yitol mana. So he says, the guy who tells me that I had a boy, he gets 100. So then, if Yalda Zachar, then no Talmana. That's exact. So the Bryce is only talking about 100. They're talking about Mifsarani. We're talking about the guy who was the bearer of the good news. Im Nekeva Mana. If it's a girl, I'm going to give the messenger 100. Then Yalda Nekeva no Talmana. What about Yalda Zachar Unekeva? Ein Lo Elamana. It's still the same because I only committed to pay you once. I didn't know I was having twins. They didn't do ultrasound. Okay, she's a little bigger. What are you going to tell her? You look a little bigger than last time? That's definitely not a smart move to tell a woman who's expecting a child. So you let it be. And then if she has 2 babies, okay, givaldik. But how much gets to the mevaser? 100, because that's all that the father ever agreed to. Lo Amar. He never spoke about that case. That wasn't one of the cases that was articulated. So it says the Gemara, Do Amar Nami im Zachar b'nekeva. Nami. He said both. Then Yitol Mana. He said, no, all the cases were articulated. So it says the Gemara, Ella, if all the cases are articulated and everybody has 100, why did you present it as 3 different cases? Just everybody gets 100. The Mu'ute Mai. So it says the Gemara, the Mu'ute Nefel Rachmana Litzlan. If a stillborn is born, so there, even if the Mavaser says you had a child and it was a boy, but it was a stillborn, no money is given over under those circumstances. Obviously, very painful cases. It says the Gemara, Hahu, there was a story. We are 7 lines down on Kuf Mem Aleph Amud Beis. Hod Amar Le'Debisu. A man says to his wife, Nichsi lahai de me'averes. To the child with which you are pregnant. So she's a baby in utero. The husband says, I'm giving my money to this person, and she's pregnant. Amar Rav Huna, have mizake ubar. That's a case of being mizake ubar, of trying to give something to an ubar. Mizake ubar lo kana. That doesn't work. You can't do that. You can't give, because ubar is yerach imo, right? So like it's still the wife. So you can't earmark something for an ubar, for a fetus. That doesn't work. It says the Gemara, that's not true. That's actually not true at all. Esvei, we have a brisa of Nachman says Rav Huna, Haomer im yalda ishti zachar yital mana, yalda zachar notal mana. That if my wife does have a boy, I'm going to give him 100, then he's going to get 100. So what do we see from here? That ubar is koneh. So which one is it? In Lumdus, we can really appreciate this question. If a woman is pregnant with a child, ultrasound shows it's a boy, and the man says, this boy, I've given him $100. Is he currently the owner of $100 as an ubar? So no, or yes. It's a big machlokes, it seems. So says the Gemara, Amar Le, Rav Huna says back to Rav Nachman, I don't know what to tell you. Mishnah Seinu, Eini Yodea Mishnah. The Mishnah doesn't make any sense. We don't hold that way. We hold that a mizake leubar is lo kana. Hold on 1 second. Maybe we should say that when we say that an ubar is able to be kona, v'lei Rav Meir he the Amar Adam Makna Dover Shelo Ba'al Olam. That's very good. That's a clever move. Why don't you say that according to the Shita that says that an ubar is able to make a kinyan, or not make a kinyan, or able to be gifted to, even though it's a fetus? Maybe that's according to the famed Shita of Rav Meir. That Adam is makna davar shelo ba'al olam. So I can make a kinyan to an ubar who's not yet in this world. Says the Gemara, that doesn't work. We're almost halfway down on Kuf Mem Aleph Amud Beis. Amor the shamas le Rav Meir l'davar sheyeshnu ba'olam l'davar she'enu ba'olam mi shamas le. But the ubar is not really in the world. What does that even mean, by the way, that he's not in the world? That he's not born? Yeah, I guess it means that he's not born. He is in the world, but he's just not born yet. Why didn't we say that this was a case of Rabbi Yossi, the Amar Ubar Kani? He expressly holds that an Ubar is able to make a kinyan. That's not. The Mishnah says, and this is a Mishnah in Yevamos we've learned a long time ago. Ubar posel ve'eno machel divrei Rabbi Yossi. A very difficult shita. This is a case scenario where a woman is pregnant and she's married to a Kohen, and her husband dies. They have no children, but she's pregnant when her husband dies. The Kohen dies. So she's posel. She ruins the ability for other Kohanim, for the Avadim to eat. Ve'eno machil, and she cannot eat anything either, because only through Kohanim is she allowed to eat. Her husband's dead, and she's pregnant. So she's a double trap. But what does that show you? That shows you that the ubar actually has an impact. The Rabbi Yossi says the Gemara, no, shani Yerusha, because that's a shani Yerusha ba me'eleha. Yerusha is different. You can't compare our case of Yerusha to that case of ubar posel ve'eno machil, because one case is a Yerusha which is ba me'eleha. The case of the Avadim and the Kohanim is a very different case. Why don't you say that our case is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, where we said that we're mazakel ubar? After all, the Amar Loshna Yerusha Veloshna Matana. You can give whatever you want to whoever you want, says Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. Ashita we've discussed at length many a time. We last saw this on Daf Kuf Lamed. Ditnan Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka Omer Im Omar Al Misha Roy Liyarsho Dvarav Kayamin. He says that if someone's roy to be Yorish, then that's fine. So maybe we can say, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, that the ubar is koneh because he holds that I can be makneh my Yerusha to anybody. Says the Gemara, no. Emar Deshamas like Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. When did he say you can be makneh to anyone you want on planet Earth? That's the davar sheyeshno ba'olam. That's for a child that's in the world who's born already. But the davar she'eno ba'olam be Omar. Mechatesi, the Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka would hold that you could be makneh to an ubar. Maybe we should say that he holds like Rabbi Yossi, that ubar is posel. So we see that an ubar can make a kinyan, combining two shitas. Says the Gemara, maybe, but miyemar de sabarla. Who says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka holds like Rabbi Yossi in regards to an ubar that he makes a kinyan? So that you can't say either. But lei perhaps the case we're talking about is b'mivzrani, the person who was mevaser, who gave over information, and that's we're not talking about the ubar at all. Maybe that's what the Mishnah is talking about. It says the Gemara, Yihachi, I don't understand the Seifa. What did we say in the Seifa? The Ketani Seifa, 5 lines from the bottom. Vim ein sham yoresh elahu, yoresh, that the baby does get it. The ubar, yoresh hakol. Says the Gemara, even if sarani yoresh, my avidte. Even if sarani, if we're talking about the mevaser, then why is it talking about a yoresh at all? You should just talk about the mevaser. Yoresh my avidte. So says the Gemara, maybe we should say we're talking about the ubar, granted, but he's only going to be kona when the baby's born, but not yet. I don't mean he's making kona now. You're right. You can't be mezaka ubar. That doesn't work. And really, we're only talking about upon birth. Says the Gemara, that's not so pashut because if we're talking about only when the baby is born, the katani seifa. What do we say at the end of our Mishnah? Vim amar kol mashateleid ishti yitol hareze yitol. It shouldn't say kol shetelet. It should say kol sheyald mi baile. The tense is wrong. If you want to say that our Mishnah is only talking about when the baby is actually born, then say sheyalda. Don't say shetelet because that means future mi baile. And lastly, for today, top of Kuf Mem Beis Manal, the lema. Perhaps we should say that our Mishnah is talking about a case that there's a difference in our Mishnah, and the Mishnah should read lichish for when it is born. A change in the text. Says the Gemara, Rav Huna l'taimi. This doesn't work. Rav Huna doesn't like this because Amar Rav Huna, af l'chesheteled lo kana. Where do we see that this is true? Says the Gemara, the Amar Rav Nachman amazake l'ubar lo kana. Rav Nachman says that if a person tries to be mazake to an ubar, there's no kinyan. L'chesheteled kana, but only if and when the language was that the baby was to be born, then there is a kinyan. Rav Huna Amar af l'chesheteled lo kana. He says, no dice, that doesn't work at all. Last line of the day, Rav Sheshas Amar, echad zeh, kana. Both lichasheteled and not lichasheteled, but the mizaka bar, he says, both of them are kona. So this requires a matrix. We have shitas lakan in regards to the status of a kinyan being mizaka to an ubar. Some say yes, some say no. Some say l'chashetele, the future language, only when the baby's born. Some say it's kona, some say it's not. So there's shitas all over the place. And we'll pick up over here with the shita of Rav Sheshas tomorrow. Tomorrow night, Emir Hashem will do a blot and a half to get ready for Shabbos. Kuf Mem Beis is not so long. And Kuf Mem Gimel Medalef is a little bit longer, but Emir Hashem, we should make some good headway. That will bring us to Shabbos, and I will be here this Shabbos, and we should, Emir Hashem, get through Kuf Mem Dalid. Wishing you all a beautiful night.